Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into a fascinating world
Okay.
of ancient wisdom. With chapter 7 of the Bhagavad Gita,
Yeah.
it's often called the Book of Religion by Discernment. We've got a single chapter to unpack,
Okay.
which means we can really get into the nitty-gritty
Yeah.
and explore the core concepts. And don't worry,
Right.
you don't need to be a scholar of Sanskrit to follow along.
Of course not.
Our expert is here to help us break it down.
Absolutely.
And more importantly,
Yeah.
see how these ancient teachings might be surprisingly relevant to our lives today.
Yeah, it's amazing how these timeless questions about reality knowledge and the nature of the divine still resonate, thousands of years later.
Right. So let's jump right in. The chapter opens with Krishna,
Okay.
the central figure in the Bhagavad Gita, making a pretty bold promise to Arjuna. He claims he's about to reveal the utmost lore,
Okay.
knowledge that leaves no more to know.
Mm.
What's the significance of this statement? Is Krishna just being dramatic, or is there something deeper going on here?
Well, the chapter is all about seeing beyond the surface, piercing the veil of illusion to understand the true nature of reality. So this utmost lore isn't just about accumulating facts.
Right.
It's about a fundamental shift in perception.
Okay, so it's not like downloading a cosmic Wikipedia entry into your brain.
Exactly.
More about like upgrading your whole operating system.
Exactly. It's about seeing the world in a completely new light, understanding the interconnectedness of everything.
Now, one of the things that really struck me
Yeah.
is how Krishna describes himself in this chapter. He's not just a deity sitting on a throne somewhere.
Uh-huh.
He's the taste of water, the light of the sun, the strength of a man's seed. It's a very vivid and almost pantheistic image. What's going on here? What's the significance of this description?
It's a way of emphasizing Krishna's immanence, his presence within all things. He's not separate from the world. He's the very fabric of existence. Think about it. We experience those things every day. They're essential to life.
Right.
Krishna is saying, I am that which sustains you, that which gives you life and vitality.
So it's not just about worshiping an external deity.
Right.
It's about recognizing the divine within ourselves and in the world around us.
Precisely. And this brings us to another key theme in the chapter. Maya, the veil of illusion. It's the idea that we're often blinded by our own perceptions, our desires, our fears. We mistake the surface level of reality for the whole picture.
It's like that saying, we don't see the world as we see it as we are.
Yeah.
And speaking of seeing things clearly, there's that intriguing passage about evildoers being unable to see the true nature of reality. What's the connection there between morality and perception?
What's fascinating is that the text suggests our actions and our understanding are intertwined. Those driven by selfish desires, by harmful intentions. Their perception becomes clouded. It's like their ego creates a distortion field
Wow.
that prevents them from seeing the bigger picture, the divine interconnectedness of all things.
So it's not just about being a good person to get into some cosmic good books. It's about cultivating a clear perception of reality.
Exactly.
Removing those mental and emotional obstacles that distort our understanding.
Exactly. It's about aligning our actions with our highest understanding, recognizing that our inner world shapes our perception of the outer world.
Now, the chapter also introduces this idea of 4 types of seekers who come to Krishna.
Okay.
The distressed, the knowledge seeker, the helper, and the steadfast. What resonates most with you?
Oh, that's a great question.
And what do these different paths tell us about the human experience?
I think we all experience moments of distress in life, those times when we're pushed to seek something beyond ourselves. But what I find particularly compelling is the path of the knowledge seeker, that constant yearning to understand, to peel back the layers of reality and see what lies beneath. And I think what's beautiful about this chapter is that it suggests all these paths, while different, can lead us to a deeper connection with the divine. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to spiritual growth.
So it's like there are many paths up the mountain,
Exactly.
but they all lead to the same summit.
Right?
It's about finding the way that works for you, what resonates with your own unique experience and personality. Speaking of finding a path, the chapter really emphasizes the importance of devotion to Krishna as a way to liberation. And it even makes this bold claim that all other gods are just aspects of Krishna. Help us understand this a little better. Is the Bhagavad Gita saying all other gods are just lesser versions of Krishna?
This is where the chapter delves into the concept of monotheism versus polytheism. While acknowledging the existence of other deities, it ultimately posits Krishna as the supreme all-encompassing source of divinity.
Okay, so it's not about rejecting other beliefs outright.
Right.
It's more about seeing them as potentially different expressions of the same underlying truth, all flowing back to this one ultimate source.
That's a nuanced way of putting it. It's about recognizing the unity behind the diversity of spiritual experiences. And remember, this was written in a time and place where polytheism was the norm, so this was a radical idea.
It definitely makes you think about how we perceive the divine right and all these different ways we try to connect with something greater than ourselves. But before we get too philosophical, let's take a quick break and come back to dive even deeper into this chapter. All right, we're back and ready to continue our deep dive into Chapter 7 of the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
One thing that keeps coming up for me is this fascinating link the chapter makes between our inner world and the outer world.
Yes. That interconnectedness is a recurring theme throughout the text. It's this idea that our inner state, our thoughts and desires directly influence how we perceive and experience the world around us.
Right, like we were talking about lower gods earlier and how the chapter suggests that anything we prioritize above our connection to the divine can become a stumbling block. It's almost like we create our own illusions by getting caught up in those attachments.
That's a great observation. The text is saying that if we're consumed by material desires or driven by ego, we're essentially worshiping those lower gods. And that limits our ability to see the bigger picture, to connect with that deeper reality Krishna is talking about.
It's not about denying ourselves pleasure or rejecting the world. It's more about being mindful of where our focus lies and recognizing the difference between enjoying the world and being enslaved by it. There's another passage in this chapter that I found particularly thought-provoking. It says that Krishna is unborn and changeless, hidden behind a magic veil of shows. How do we reconcile this idea of Krishna as eternal and unchanging with the ever-changing nature of the world around us?
This gets to the core of spiritual understanding. The chapter is highlighting the distinction between the realm of appearances, which is constantly in flux, and the underlying reality, which is eternal and unchanging.
So it's like the difference between the waves on the surface of the ocean and the vast depths beneath.
That's a brilliant analogy. The waves are constantly changing, but the ocean itself remains constant. It's the source from which the waves arise and to which they eventually return.
And Krishna represents that underlying reality, the source of all creation, the constant amidst the chaos.
Exactly, and the chapter is inviting us to look beyond the surface level of things, to seek that unchanging truth that lies at the heart of all existence.
So how do we apply this idea of piercing the veil of illusion to our daily lives? What practical steps can we take to see through this magic veil of shows?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? There's no simple answer, but the text offers some valuable clues. One key is cultivating mindfulness, paying attention to our thoughts, emotions, and motivations. By becoming more aware of our inner world, we start to see how we create our own illusions, how our biases and assumptions color our perception.
It's like taking a step back and observing our own thought patterns without judgment, seeing how we react to situations and understanding the underlying motivations.
Precisely. And another important practice is detachment, letting go of our attachment to material possessions, outcomes, and even our own ego.
So it's not about becoming emotionless or indifferent to the world. It's more about recognizing that true happiness and fulfillment come from within, not from external things.
Beautifully said. It's about shifting our focus from chasing fleeting pleasures to cultivating inner peace and contentment.
And there's that beautiful idea of gratitude, right? Appreciating the present moment and finding joy in the simple things rather than constantly striving for something more.
Absolutely. Cultivating gratitude helps us shift our perspective from a place of lack to a place of abundance. It allows us to see the beauty and wonder that's already present in our lives.
This chapter is packed with so much wisdom. It's like a treasure chest waiting to be opened. I'm struck by the emphasis on knowledge. Krishna repeatedly talks about knowing him, understanding his true nature. But what role does knowledge play in this process of spiritual awakening? Is it simply about accumulating information?
It's a good question. The chapter highlights the importance of both knowledge and devotion. It's not just about intellectual understanding, but about experiential knowing. It's about integrating wisdom into our lives and living in accordance with it.
So it's not enough to just read the Bhagavad Gita or any spiritual text for that matter. We need to embody the teachings to allow them to transform our thoughts, actions, and relationships.
Exactly. It's about bridging the gap between knowing and being.
And that leads us to another important concept, the idea of different paths to liberation. We talked about the 4 types of seekers earlier, the distressed, the knowledge seeker, the helper, and the steadfast. But the chapter seems to suggest that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to spiritual growth. Each individual must find their own path.
That's a really nuanced point that often gets overlooked. We tend to think there's one right way to do things, especially when it comes to spirituality. But the Bhagavad Gita acknowledges the diversity of human experience and suggests that there are multiple ways to connect with the divine.
So it's about finding what resonates with us, what speaks to our heart, and following that path with sincerity and intention.
Precisely. And that path may evolve over time as we grow and our understanding deepens.
It's not about rigid dogma or following a set of rules. It's about cultivating a deep and authentic connection with the divine, however that manifests in our lives. It's about finding our own unique path to liberation, a path that's both personal and universal.
That's a great way to put it. It's a journey that each of us must undertake individually, yet it connects us to something far greater than ourselves.
This chapter is really inviting us to embrace the complexity of the spiritual journey, to let go of our preconceived notions and approach it with an open mind and heart.
It's about recognizing the spark of divinity within us and allowing it to shine brightly.
And in doing so, we illuminate the world around us. We'll delve deeper into these themes and more in the final part of our exploration of Chapter 7. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It's amazing how much wisdom is packed into just a single chapter of the Bhagavad Gita.
It really is.
We're wrapping up our exploration of Chapter 7.
Okay.
And I'm really struck by this recurring theme of choice. The idea that we have the power to choose what we worship.
Yes. The chapter emphasizes that our attention is precious, and where we direct it shapes our reality.
Yeah.
It's like we're constantly making choices about what we value, what we prioritize.
And those choices ultimately determine whether we're caught up in the illusions of lower gods,
Right.
or seeking a higher truth, as we've been talking about.
Exactly.
Now, the chapter also draws a distinction between those who worship the unmanifested and those who worship Krishna as the ultimate manifestation of the divine.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help us unpack this a bit? What's the difference between worshiping the unmanifested and worshiping a specific deity like Krishna?
It's a great question, and it touches on the diversity of spiritual paths. Worshipping the unmanifested often involves practices like meditation and contemplation, seeking to connect with that formless, transcendent aspect of reality.
So it's about going beyond names and forms, experiencing the divine as pure consciousness without any specific image or representation.
Exactly. It's about tapping into that universal energy that underlies all of existence. While worshipping a deity like Krishna involves devotion rituals and a personal relationship with that divine form.
So it's about connecting with the divine through a particular embodiment, the tangible representation of the sacred.
Yay.
It makes you think about how different cultures and religions have developed such diverse ways of approaching the divine.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is that the chapter suggests both paths are valid, both can lead to liberation. What matters is the sincerity of our devotion and the clarity of our understanding.
So it's not about finding the right path,
Right.
but about finding the path that resonates with us,
Exactly.
that helps us connect with the divine in a way that feels authentic and meaningful.
And that path may evolve over time as we grow and learn and our understanding deepens. We may find ourselves drawn to different practices or forms of worship. It's a lifelong journey.
This chapter is like a guidebook for that journey,
Yeah,
offering us insights and teachings that can illuminate the path ahead.
absolutely.
And one of the most powerful messages I'm taking away from this chapter is the message of hope. Even amidst the challenges and illusions of life, there's this promise of liberation, of finding lasting peace and happiness.
Yes, it's a message that has resonated with people for centuries, and it's incredibly empowering because it reminds us that we're not simply victims of fate or circumstance. We have the power to choose our path, to shape our destiny by cultivating our awareness, deepening our understanding, and nurturing our connection with the divine.
It's about recognizing that we're not separate from that divine source, but rather an integral part of it, and in realizing that we can tap into our full potential and experience the boundless freedom of our true nature.
It's a journey that's both challenging and rewarding, but it's a journey that's ultimately worth taking.
Well, there you have it, folks. A deep dive into Chapter 7 of the Bhagavad Gita. We've explored some pretty profound concepts today, from the nature of reality and the power of choice to the different paths to liberation. And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring these ideas on your own, to delve deeper into the text and see what resonates with you, what insights emerge for you. It's a conversation that can continue long after this episode ends.
The Bhagavad Gita is not just a book to be read, it's a guide to be lived. So take these teachings to heart, apply them to your daily life, and see how they can transform your experience of the world.
That's the beauty of a deep dive. It's just the beginning of a much larger exploration, but we hope this has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to continue seeking and questioning and diving deep into the wisdom that's all around us. Until next time, keep exploring and keep growing.